Scary Alvarez is back. Very exciting. And I'm here to talk transfer portal grades, specifically offense. Caveat, still could add some guys. That could always happen. But the reality is the vast majority of Wisconsin's transfer portal class is locked and loaded. So I want to start with offense, and my next episode will go to defense. But I'm going to go through every position on offense, except for kicker. Quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, and very importantly, offensive line. I'll save that one for last. Give my vibes on it, what I think the hits and misses are, where the potential lies, and then a letter grade. But anyway, we're going to get started. And throw Old Scary a like and a subscription if you haven't already. I always appreciate it. Quarterback. Let's get going right at the top. And I'm not going to pretend that I don't look at what others do and others say around the interwebs about these players, these additions. I do, of course. I mean, I'm a student of the game in the sense of it's always good to know if you're an outlier or not. But I've been a little surprised at the grading and analysis on the Colton Joseph ad. Colton Joseph, obviously, is the crown jewel of this transfer portal class for Luke Fickell, Old Dominion quarterback, absolutely fantastic athlete, 1,000+ yards on the ground, 13 touchdowns, 21 touchdowns through the air. Throws a pretty good deep ball. Adjustments, not really going from the adjustments of going through a group of 5 to the Big Ten, but adjusting his game, being under center more. There's all kinds of things he's going to have to do to make Jeff Grimes' offense work. But the raw materials and performance are there. We've seen it on the field. So I think maybe higher on Joseph, and he is, as Luke Fickell has said, I don't think this was cope. He said he was our number one target all along, and I believe him. And the money seems to bear that out. So that's an incredible addition. I think you kind of start there with your transfer portal stuff. Getting Deuce Adams in from Louisville, bunch of eligibility left. We don't know how good this kid is going to be. And the reality is, the less we know about how good he is in 2026, the better. Because if he has to play again, that means another transfer portal quarterback has gone down. But he was a very highly regarded Austin, Texas recruit a couple years ago. Went to Louisville, didn't get the PT he wanted, and moved on. So I really like those additions to the Carter Smith, Ryan Hopkins situation. I'm not entirely certain you don't want to add maybe one additional arm in there just to, for flavor, given the injury history. And now I have to give the grade. And I vacillated a little bit between A and AB on this one. But I feel like when you land your number one target in the portal in Colton Joseph, you got him in the fold, and then you get a high upside backup with a lot of eligibility left. You retain Carter Smith. Not that the retention is going to factor into the grades, but I'm just giving flavor. And I got Ryan Hopkins coming in. This has to be an A. Has to be an A. I don't think you could have asked for much more coming into the portal transfer cycle at quarterback than what Luke Fickell and the Badgers did with Colton Joseph, Deuce Adams, and then retaining. I don't know how you could do better. That's an A, kids. Running back. I really like this. Now, again, we lost some guys. Dylan Jones is gone, and we have unfortunately, Gideon Tuca is going to be out for the season. But he held on to Darian Dupree. And since we're talking about portal grades, Abu Sama, he's got 1 year left from Iowa State, 5.2 yards per carry. Very, very fast, very, very strong. Should be able to be a plug-and-play guy for Jeff Grimes' scheme. That's as pretty close to a home run right there. I love Sama. But you didn't stop. You realized the injuries happen, not the least of which you're playing fourth-string running backs in 2025. You got Brian Jackson, got 2 years left for USC. He's more the thunder, if there's going to be a thunder and lightning component. Could see him on the goal line. And then you got an intriguing prospect, Nate Palmer from down at TCU, 3 years left. All kinds of potential, kind of like a lot of the guys that we talked about in other positions. We're just not sure where it's going to go, but it definitely adds to the depth of the room. And I see him no worse than a fourth or fifth string guy who you don't want to see a lot of if you can help it this year, but can certainly add to the room. Really, really, really like what I'm seeing in the running back room. Not only the depth, but the talent and the different types of running styles. I'm hesitating to dive into hyperbole here. I'm always careful with that, but I think this is an A as well. I mean, if you're again, we're not grading as if this is the Ohio State Buckeyes. This is the Wisconsin Badgers, a team that's looking to get back to respectability in 2026 and building it piece by piece, room by room. And with the amount we spent at quarterback and all those sorts of things, I think this room, especially with Sama, fantastic. A fantastic job, another A. So we have an A at quarterback, an A at running back. For today's purposes, that's where the A's are going to stop. But it's not all doom and gloom. But let's talk about wide receiver. This has been as divisive of a transfer portal situation as any Wisconsin has had. They did target some high-end players early in the portal, there earlier in January. Didn't get the guys they wanted at those high ends. Had a couple of visits that were ironed out that never ended up happening. It's a tough sell, guys. I mean, the money notwithstanding, it's very, very hard, even if you got Colton Joseph, to sell the vision of a big-time receiver coming in and having success at Madison, not only historically when you haven't had many of them, but last year when you're leading receiver, a guy who is going to be an NFL draft pick probably in the first 4 rounds, Vinny Anthony, had like 360 yards over the whole season. It's a tough sell, guys. It's a tough sell. So I think I am going to grade a little bit on a curve since I'm the professor and giving these grades, but let's see what we got here. We got Shamar Rigby, who has a lot of eligibility left. He has a lot of potential from Oklahoma State. Fairly big kid, some talent there. A guy I really like, I had him on my favorites list, Jalen Domingo. Southeast Louisiana, so he's going to be bumping up from FCS. But he had some genuine on-field production. 1,000 yards, double-digit touchdowns, big kid. You have some boundary things you like. You see a receiver there. I'm not sure you even have to squint where you could see him being dangerous around the goal line. Really like that. And this is not going to factor into the grade, but you did get Eugene Hilton back. So I guess in a sense that's a portal ad, but that's another really nice potential piece that you have. Now I'm going to talk about the lottery tickets. I've said before that's a little bit of an insulting thing for these kids. These are human beings who work hard and have talent. So it's not a lottery ticket like you're going down to the come and go or something and or 7-Eleven and scratching off. But you have Zion Kearney and Malachi Coleman. Not the same guy, different guys. Both high pedigree, fast, potentially really good boundary receivers who just simply have not made an impact at really any substantial level in college football. Coleman started at Nebraska, went to Minnesota, just couldn't really break the 2 deep for much of the season. Up at a team without star receivers. That's a little distressing. Kearney, a little more of an excuse in that OU has a pretty loaded wide receiver room most years, and 2025 was no exception. But you have a couple of guys here. If they can approach their ceiling, you have some incredible talent on the cheap. And both of them could be that boundary guy Wisconsin has been looking for forever. So, and they one more thing, they brought in Eli Adams from Louisville. Yes, there's a relation to Deuce Adams. That's his brother. Maybe not that most highly regarded recruit. I'm not sure if that was a package deal or what the deal is, but he will be a body in that room, along with Chris Brooks Jr. I just think it's going to be a really, really interesting room that has a lot of potential. Proven guys that are going to plug right in, don't have them. Don't have them, guys. And so that has to be the lens with which I'm looking at this transfer portal haul. I'm going to give it a C+. And that C+ is, again, not to denigrate any of the individuals, but it's more what you were looking for coming in and what you ended up coming out. If the potential hits for some of these guys, that grade could look like a preposterous undergrading. And I'm hoping that they can come back and say, you give us a C+, you moron. It's way better than that because Zion Kearney had 6 touchdowns in 2026. I don't, again, I don't know, but there are a lot of pieces I really like. It's not short on potential. It's short on go-to guys you can count on. So it's going to be a very interesting camp, but that's going to be a C+. Let's turn to tight ends. I really struggled with this one. Went back and forth. We lost some really good production in the tight end room. Very, very solid. And need to be filled. And Wyan Schwendeman, Southern Illinois. You might remember Southern Illinois is where a very, very predominant quarterback from Wisconsin, who played a lot in 2025, came from, in Hunter Simmons. And Jacob Harris from Bowling Green. Let's break it down. Harris and Schwendeman, by the way, both have 2 years left, so these are not one-year projects. Harris didn't have a ton of receiving, but he did have solid production around the goal line. 5 touchdowns. He has the body and size you're looking for to plug right into that room. Would I be shocked if Jacob Harris started day one, at least in passing sets? No, I would not be. So it's hard not to call that a win, to get a guy who's a day one starter. That's really, really good job to identify that guy. Don't get the impression he's going to be another Tanner Koziel from the MAC who's going to come in and block and say, I don't like blocking, and then pack his bags. I think we'll be okay. Harris can block. But if you're concerned about blocking, Wyan Schwendeman, aforementioned kid from SIU, 2 years left as well. This guy's probably not going to get a lot of receptions, but he appears to be, at least in frame and demeanor, kind of that classic Alvarezian tight end for blocking and those kind of sets. He's not a NFL kind of guy that's going to catch a lot of balls. He's not a Travis Beckham, but he is kind of a Dag Retzlaff kind of dude where, yeah, that's a blast from the past, who can come in and get you in short yardage, maybe catch a pass or two. I wouldn't stun me if he had a touchdown reception. One of those crazy, like, you look like you're blocking and then release. But I kind of like the tight end. And you got some guys coming back who you like too. It's going to be a lot of competition in that room for playing time. I'll give that a B. I'll give it a B. That's about where we are. And finally, what a lot of you are waiting for, I think, is going to be the offensive line room. And my grading, I'm going to be upfront about this, is going to be on an Eric Mateos curve. Eric Mateos, as I have talked about, and as many of you probably already know, came in from Arkansas, one of the worst teams in the SEC, but one of the best offensive lines. Graded incredibly well, very highly regarded. Kind of a fun guy on the social media too. I've been kind of going back and forth with him a little bit. Kind of, seems like he's. I could see him going into a room and talking to a kid and having the kid be excited, like that. He has that demeanor. This is an interesting room that he has brought in. Now, before we even hit the room, we have Kevin Haywood coming back from ACL. He is the presumptive starter at left tackle. Big problem solved. That was a bit of an issue last year. Emerson Mandel has re-signed. I think he's going to be a starter as well. So now it's center and some of those other positions. You got a guard, tackle in all likelihood, and you gotta fill those. You may have noticed that none of the young recruits, freshmen and sophomores that Wisconsin had transferred. That's a big deal, and that is a window into what Mateos is trying to do with this portal class. So that's right then and there, you're not going to bring a bunch of 6-year seniors in. You know that. But he did bring in Austin Kowecki, a center, a plug-and-play fifth-year guy from Oklahoma State. That is a huge deal. I don't think this guy's going to be an all-Big Ten performer, but he's the kind of guy you can plug into a position that was horribly problematic for the Badgers last year. From injury, snaps, and just overall spotty play, he's day one. So you got the center thing next to Haywood and Mandel taken care of. That's very, very important. That's a huge win. After that, Mateos went in and got young dudes with potential to walk into that room, compete with the guys who are already there, and just see, kind of like a gladiator match, just see who survives. I kind of like that. I mean, again, ideally you bring in multi-year starters so you plug right in, but then how do you retain the guys that are waiting to play? It's always the thing you have to do there. And Mateos erred on the side of retaining guys that are young. I like that. Okay, PJ Wilkins, Lucas Simmons, and Blake Cherry. I'm not going to get too deep into any of these guys' potentials, but they're guys that have shown that they can do stuff. And that is super duper important. I will talk about PJ Wilkins a little bit. He played in almost every game for Ole Miss, who is a very, very talented team who went, made it to the semifinals this year in the college football playoff. And he got legitimate playing time, and he entered the portal before the end of the season. I think this guy sees himself as a legitimate starter. So there's PJ Wilkins has shown more than Simmons and Cherry, to be very clear. But I don't think you bring in Wilkins and he's a whiz bang, no doubt, plug and play starter. I think the guy's gonna have to compete. If you told me Wilkins was on the Wisconsin starting offensive line next year, I would not be shocked. Blake Cherry, by the way, is a kid that Mateos knows well. He's from Arkansas. So Simmons from Florida State, you got just more pieces. Pieces you like. Guys with high upside, good pedigree, good measurables. I really like that. And most recently, Styles Blackman. D2 guy from Augustana, obviously a starter there. He has to move up a big level. But, I've heard people talk about this gentleman, and no one would be shocked if he ends up in Wisconsin's 2 deep in 2026. That's a pretty big deal. So combining the fact that you have a big, possibly the rock of your entire offensive line in Haywood coming back, you retain Mandel, you retained all of your freshmen and sophomore offensive linemen who have been playing and not playing from a couple of classes, to be brutally honest, that were pretty good. I mean, these were well-regarded classes by the ex-offensive line coach. And then you bring in Kawecki, Wilkins, Simmons, Cherry, and Blackman. I really like the cut of this offensive line's jib, and I like the class with all of those curves in place that I'm grading on, that Mateos brought in. I'm going to give him an AB. If you force me to say is it A- or B+, maybe it's a B+. But at Wisconsin, it's an AB and a really, really solid job. And this is the position group, well, wide receiver too, but this is the position group that I am super excited to see what they can do. I think that line is going to be, besides quarterback, the room that's the most improved on Wisconsin next year. I think it's gonna take a mammoth, monumental leap. Is it going to be an elite Big Ten offensive line room? Probably not. Is it going to be a really solid and functional offensive line room that's going to give your running game and passing game a chance to actually function in games? Yes, I do think be that. That seems like a faint praise, but I believe in Mateos, and I believe in this group, and they get an AB. So that's going to do it for the offense. Those are the grades. I'm not an easy grader, kids. It may seem like it, but I'm not. Anyway, Scary Alvarez is going to be back very soon with my defensive grades for the transfer portal class, and really appreciate it. Scary Alvarez out.